welcome today. Thank you so much for being here. We sure appreciate it. I had to move out of my daughter's room, so now I don't have my big sign behind me today. We'll have it back hopefully next week. I'm so excited to have Stacy Eads with us on our show today. When we first started Purse Power way back in the day, Stacy was one of the first people we went to, and she helped us build, I think, our original website. So thank you. You gave us some really good advice and insight into what we needed to do. We'll be in webinar format so that we can go ahead and tape the session. And again, video for our shows are always available on the website under Let's Share the Journey. And we've had up to 800 people watch the video after the session's over. So I think it's very valuable for people to be able to watch it when they want to. We do these every Friday at 10 a.m. Central, and I hope you can join us. If you ever want to register for a session, I put the session up every Monday that we're going to have that Friday. So you can always go to our website on Monday morning and register. Please do introduce yourselves on chat. And I hear some kind of fan going in the background, just FYI. I'd like for everybody to get to know each other. And we've got an in-person session on May 28th. So please do come to that, and you'll get to meet people and talk to them personally. We break you into groups and you get to really know each other. Purse Power is working to help women use their massive purchasing power to drive positive change. We believe that if women, who make 80% of all purchasing decisions, would choose to buy from the companies that actively promote women, and we would do that in mass, and we could create a funding stream for battered women's shelters in the process, we could absolutely shatter glass ceilings and change lives. So that's what we're trying to do with Purse Power. Again, thank you so much for being here, Stacy. This is going to be a great program.
Thank you for having me. It's such a humbling experience to be asked to be on this. I have attended so many times and enjoyed it week to week, and it's awe-inspiring to be asked to be on it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. All right, and quickly, I just want to shout out some of our shareholders that are on the line, I think. So Danita Thomas, Jennifer Grigsby, Lynn Harden, Luke Kerr, and Jean Kelly. And thank you again for your faith in Purse Power. Okay, I'll introduce Stacy. Please share your comments via chat as we go. We're going to use the Q&A box for the questions a little later on, and we'll go ahead and get started. So Stacy has been honored by the Journal Record as one of 50 making a difference 3 years in a row, leading to her inclusion in the Circle of Excellence. She's well known as a multi-award winning Most Admired CEO. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And she empowers other CEOs across the USA and Canada to embrace their leadership potential as an international scaling up business coach. And she'll talk to us about that in just a few minutes, what that is. She's on the board of the Better Business Bureau of Central Oklahoma and has received the Torch Ethics Award. She's also served as an ambassador chairwoman for the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. And presently, Stacy writes a monthly scaling up column for the Edmond Business Online magazine. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into it. I'm still hearing the buzzing noise. I don't know what that is, if we've got an issue with something buzzing, but okay. So let's go ahead and start. So Stacy, we want to get to know you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background? And I want to know how you arrived at this place in your life and career.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I switched audio to see if that was going to help you a little bit.
Okay.
So really, my background began in nonprofits, which is generally surprising to most people. So I started with Citizens Caring for Children. And what was really important to me was that when I was a teenager and I entered the workforce and started in nonprofits, I began a career that was all about helping others. And I think a lot of other women have worked in nonprofits and felt that camaraderie and that vibe towards a shared vision. And that was really exciting to me whenever I was young. And I stayed with Citizens Caring for Children for several years and really enjoyed that helping others concept. We were helping children who had been abused and neglected and taken from their homes and put into DHS custody. And that really, to me, shaped the rest of my career. So for 20 plus years ever since then, I have always felt the need to have a career or to have a job in which I felt like I was helping others. There was an executive director, actually, who was at that nonprofit who I think did me a huge favor. She was a really great female mentor to me. And before I was going to graduate college, I went to her and said, okay, so I'm going to have this fancy degree in my hand. What happens next, right? What would I ever do if I wanted to be in a leadership role like you 5, 10, 15 years from now? What would you recommend for me? And her name was Patty Pace, and I will never forget her because she was one of the very first mentors who laid a brick on my path. I felt like she really helped me understand that there was a bigger, better world out there for me, and that even though I felt really connected to helping other people, I did not necessarily have to do that strictly in the nonprofit world. So she opened my eyes, and that's how I ended up getting my first interview for my very first technology job.
I'll be darned. I'll be darned. Well, that's how wonderful. I like that picture too of a brick on the path. That's excellent. And
Yes,
women need to support each other. Go ahead.
absolutely. I basically have this life motto these days. You know, we all go to conferences, and sometimes you're sitting in the audience and you get a ton out of it and you write so many things down, but like, what's the one main thing that really sticks with you? And I went to a conference several years ago, and they had us kind of write down a motto. And I wrote down, I am a brick paver. And that has really stuck with me from that conference, because when you think about, you know, the Wizard of Oz and the yellow brick road, and trying to get to a dream or get to a goal, every single brick that has been laid before me on my path was a mentor or an individual who helped me or assisted me or taught me something. And I want to be that person as well. And I don't think that you have to wait until later in life to start saying that you're a mentor or that you're helping others. You can do it while you're on the journey too.
Great point. Great point. That's excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So I know during the pandemic, you've been volunteering a lot globally with Entrepreneurs Organization, EO, and the Young Presidents Organization, YPO. What are the types of things you're hearing CEOs talk about? What are they struggling with these days? And what are some of your top recommendations for them? And hopefully for us.
Yeah, so that was such a privilege to be a part of. I am the scaling up training and coordinator for scaling up and EO partnerships and as well as YPO partnerships. So throughout 2020 as well as into 2021, I think I have helped about 150 executives, and not just obviously here in Oklahoma, but from a global perspective, people who are on different continents that I am. It's been really exciting to help them think outside the box, because especially early on in the pandemic, and it's also really occurring right now as we're a little bit exiting the pandemic and seeing the end in sight, seeing some rays of hope, people really need assistance. They need help. We can't see our own blind spots. So whenever you get into small groups, you're able to talk them through. We do something that's called a sweat. So everybody on the call is probably really similar with something like SWOT, which is your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. But typically when we do a SWOT, we're almost always looking internal. So we're looking at ourself, our team, our products, our services, our business. So when we hold these workshops, we're doing sweat, and we're looking external to ourselves. So we are looking at strengths, but we're looking at strengths of the industry that they're in, weaknesses that are in the marketplace that they're in, and then we're looking at trends that are happening in the economy. So as a coach, what was really beneficial was helping these individuals try to define what's a short-term pivot that's happening right now versus really a long-term upside potential. That's where most CEOs got stuck. They didn't quite understand, is this going to happen for 90 days, for 6 months, for 9 months? None of us knew, right?
Hard to tell, right?
If we don't know in our personal lives, then we don't feel like we know in our business life either. So they needed some help and some confidence getting into small groups, getting to think outside the box, and making sure that they spent time working on the business, right? Like strategically and proactively, and not just working in the business every day, which is more reactive and putting out fires and having to do things. So they set aside that time, and they would do some worksheets with some different coaches. And it was always really helpful for them to have peer support and be able to bounce their ideas off, because they needed to not be in an echo chamber. And they weren't quite sure whether some of these pivots were going to be long-term potential or just short-term.
So from a challenge perspective, it was the pandemic and it was the need to pivot. Is that correct? And then
the pandemic, the need to pivot, and the need to have a concrete confidence, because as a CEO or an executive or an operations manager, your team feels uncertain, and you're the one who's supposed to bring that confidence, right? But when we're having a pandemic that hasn't happened for hundreds of years, it's hard as a leader to draw on that confidence. And so those small groups was helpful. And I think if anybody on the call is going through something like that right now, their industry is really rapidly shifting or changing in 2021. I think bouncing your ideas off of a partner or somebody that you really trust and respect, or a mentor or a coach, it could be really beneficial to help you have the confidence that you need as a leader, so that everybody who's following you feels that confidence.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting because you want to be careful with it, but that authenticity about letting down the guard and talking with some key advisors that know what you're up against, that you can be authentic with, I think is important. Yeah.
Vulnerability is hard. It's hard for a lot of people, but as soon as you do it, you'll never regret it.
Yeah. That's where you get the insight. Okay. So with your background in marketing, we have a lot of coaches and independent consultants and stuff on the call. I think they'd be interested in learning how you use awards and recognition to market yourself. So how could they use a similar strategy, and how do they get started on something like that?
Yes, I always get a little embarrassed and a little shy, a little introvert comes out in me when people are reading my bio or announcing me on anything like this, because really the awards and recognition has been an amazing part of my career, but it really started in my 20s. I was working for a gentleman named Dave Miller, who runs Back 40 Design Group and the Edmund Outlook magazine, and he nominated me for one of those 40 under 40 awards. There's a whole lot of those. There's probably several of them in other states as well. And when he nominated me, that was the very first time that I'd really been nominated for an award by a boss or a confidant. And it felt so exciting. And obviously, all of the people who put on those kinds of presentations do such a great job with the awards ceremony. And you get your article and your picture in the newspaper or the magazine. And what was really neat about that experience is that I got named 40 under 40, but I wasn't even 30 yet. There was a lot of room to grow, right? And then over the years, I ended up getting nominated for 4 different 40 under 40 awards. So those who are watching today, hit up Google, see what's out there for you, because there's not just one of these. There's quite a few. Oklahoma Magazine does one. The Journal Record has a ton of wonderful awards that they do. But there's also things that are outside of your state too. So I've won awards with like Business Excellence Forum. There's things that you can apply for. Obviously, you've all heard of like Fortune 500. There's also Stevie Awards. So just Google what is interesting in your geographic area or in your industry, and set your sights on how do they determine those winners? What could you do to put yourself in that path, right? So for me, I know that the competition is really fierce. So Dawn Swift, who actually runs the Next Under 30 program, told me one time that they had thousands of applicants to just be able to choose 30 winners. So it's really big. And I think one of the ways that you make yourself stand out is by knowing your stats. So be a metric-driven leader who really knows. So when I was applying, for example, to Most Admired CEO, you can imagine that it really helped that I knew that within a year of being with the company, I'd grown it in 365 days, 300%. That's a pretty big deal when you can say a metric like that, right?
Yeah.
And then after being there for several years, I actually grew the production and the output by 600%. So when you can really quantify and qualify why you feel like you are among that type of winner, I think that matters a lot. And some of the other tips that I give to clients or to people that I'm mentoring is don't wait until there's an award that you want to apply for to ask for letters of reference. Be collecting your letters of reference in your career all along the way.
Great advice. Great advice. Well, it's interesting because one of our leaders who heads our advisory board, actually, Linda Hanneborg, she was an SVP of marketing for Express Personnel, and they grew a ton because of awards. So she actively used awards to market the company and get the recognition. The other thing that another colleague told me about is partner with somebody. If you've got another friend, CEO, nominate each other. Find the awards that you want to be recognized for and nominate each other. Because it is an inexpensive way to be seen as an expert and get the visibility that's very helpful to grow your business. Go ahead. You
It
agree?
is, absolutely. And the events, especially like the ones that the Journal Record puts on with, the Chief Financial Stewardship Award, or they even have like reader rankings and a lot of other kind of best of type things. They have construction categories, CEO categories, CFO categories. There's a lot of different things that they put on that then become not just that it's an award or that it's in the newspaper, but also it becomes an event in which you're networking and you're able to, brush elbows with some of the greatest people that are in your community, and it becomes a really neat way to expand your network and your bubble that you're in every single day in your industry.
Absolutely. Well, and by the way, I'm sure you guys know this, but most cities have a business journal. I mean, that's normally who puts these kinds of things on. So no matter where you are in the country, you can get to this and get that kind of recognition. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so women often struggle with promoting themselves, and there are cultural unconscious biases about women who are seen as too self-promotional. How do you walk the fine line to get the word out there about who you are and what you can do without turning people off?
Well, one of the ways that I think about that is to think really, you kind of have to get outside of your head and realize you're not actually promoting yourself. You don't need to worry about promoting yourself. You need to focus on whoever your customer is. People are not logical when they're buying, they are psychological. So if you really go beyond what you're normally used to with demographics and understanding, where somebody lives and what age they might be and where they might shop, and really think more about the emotional drivers, then when you're planning your marketing and you're putting social media content or blogs or articles or YouTube videos out there, the more you focus on the customer rather than yourself, the better off you're going to be. So there's probably a
Mhm.
lot of people on this call who follow the book Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It is extremely popular in the last several years. And he really teaches about focusing on your ideal client and how to make them the hero. And so I would really recommend that everybody who's on this call just think about the fears, the motivations, the stress of whatever that ideal client might be going through, and focus on how can you facilitate them overcoming that? How can you make them the hero? And you're just facilitating them getting to the journey that they want to be on. I'd also say anybody who is watching us today and they are a solopreneur, whether they're a female or male or anybody at all, they should just take an audit of the social media that they have today. Pull out a napkin, pull out a pen, super simple, make 2 columns. Every single time that you see on your social media that you were giving to your audience, giving them information, giving them articles, anything that they might perceive as value, then make a tally in the give column.
Mhm.
And then make a tally in the take column of any time you actually feel like you asked for something. Sign up for this, follow me here, do this, do that. And then
Mhm.
just look at that ratio, because I believe most social media experts are saying anywhere between a 4-time or a 10-time ratio that you want to give, take. Give, ask. So you want to be sure that you're giving at least 4 times more often than you're taking or you're asking. And some people believe it should be giving 10 times before you take or you ask. And that'll help you understand kind of how to walk that fine line of promoting yourself and your company, because it is difficult when you're a solo entrepreneur, right? Everybody knows it's you, yourself, and you talking about you.
That's excellent. That is really good advice. I love what you said. That really makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you. Let's see here. So, what other insights do you have about scaling our business? So, you're a scaling up coach. That's your expertise. What does it mean, and what are the most important considerations when we're thinking about trying to scale up?
Absolutely. So scaling up has become a bit of a trendy word that you start to see, and you see it in headlines, you see it in articles, you see it all over the place these days. But scaling up was a book and a movement that was created by Vern Harnish. And really, when I'm working as a scaling up coach with clients, those are typically clients that would define themselves by saying, we're trying to grow 20% year over year over year. So they're looking for rapid growth, and they've really kind of coined this term of scaling up if you're growing about 20% year over year over year. And the goal is to scale up with fewer growing pains. We all know that when you get bigger, you're going to have more bureaucracy, more layers of management, more processes, more policies, more procedures. Everything gets more complicated. So you have to be able to have somebody there to guide you who's been there before. And that's really what the book is about bringing together case studies and examples of people who've been there before. They really focus on 4 key decisions that they believe every business owner who wants to scale that rapidly, the 4 key decisions that they have to get right in order to kind of eliminate those chaos, eliminate those headaches. It's people, strategy, execution, and cash. So everybody knows that they've heard those terms, those great things from Jim Collins about getting the right people on the bus, putting them in the right seats, making sure they're doing the right things right. So a lot of focus is put on people, because if you don't have the right people, then who's going to be able to execute on your strategy? You've got to have a team of A players who are all aligned with the core values. So people is really important piece, but strategy is too. Because think about it, you could have this really amazing team of all these A players, but if you don't give them a roadmap of where you want to go as a company and what your vision is as a leader, then it's like Surrey, right? So if I was here and I wanted to get there, Surrey's going to give me 2, 3, 4 different routes. Which route should all those A players be taking on your team? So you got to have the right strategy. And then execution is just as important, because you can have the best people in the world and you gave them the best written strategy. And all of a sudden, 3 months after you were with a coach, that piece of paper got shoved in a drawer somewhere and you guys started to deal with fires and the things of life, and everybody forgets. So if you don't have the right people with the right strategy, executing on it every day and holding each other peer-to-peer accountable to actually making those growth steps, then you're not going to get anywhere, even with the best team, even with the best strategy. You have to execute it, right? And then that 4th decision is cash. Because when you're growing, growth sucks cash. So we are often looking with clients and trying to make sure that their cash flow is in order and that they understand all of the profit and loss statements, the balance sheets. Do they really know their numbers and know their metrics so that they don't get surprised by anything?
Very good. Very good. Okay, that's really, do you have any resources that you recommend around those? Like I was thinking about the book called Execution. I mean, have you gotten other resources like that are useful?
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I really enjoyed, I'm a very logical, very analytical person, and I love to know, why does somebody believe that? Where did it come from? Where's the science? That's just how I'm built. So one of the things that I like about the Scaling Up book is that it actually references and takes from 36 other business books and puts it all together. So there's this really cool index at the end that says, hey, if you want to learn more about people, here's 10 great books. If you want to learn more about execution, here's 10 more great books. So it really shows it more as a community of learning. I enjoy that a lot.
Okay. All right. And it sounds like, obviously this is your business. This is what you do. And it sounds like there's some kind of book that supports the methodology or the model.
There is, yeah. And I'll put into the chat, if anybody just wants kind of a recap of the book, I have an 8-page kind of what I call the Cliff Notes version.
Oh, good. Good. I
want
want
it. Down,
it.
dirty, and fast. So I'll put that into the chat for everybody if they just want a little preview of what it would be like.
Okay. That is awesome. I'd love that too. Okay. So tell us about your background as a woman in technology and then your transition into career coaching. Those are really different things. And to your point about having the analytical brain and going over and doing career coaching, I'm interested in that transition.
Yes, it is. It is quite different. So I told you that I was working in nonprofits and that I had that really great mentor, Patty Pace, and we had that wonderful conversation about kind of career path. And that was the moment where I realized I need to get outside of this bubble, see what else is out there for me. I had a coworker whose husband was working at a technology company, and it was an up and coming kind of startup type company that had really grown rapidly and grown fast. And I thought, I don't know anything about technology. Let's see what that's like. If the whole idea is getting outside my comfort zone, let's go for that interview. So I ended up becoming an executive assistant. And what was really neat about this story is that I genuinely sat in that interview, Donna, and they asked me, who is your ISP? ISP. Okay. So, sir, I think that means internet something, maybe protocol. Basically, are you asking me how I get the internet at home? So I'm a poor college student. I go to Target. I get a free AOL disk for 30 days. I quit at 29 days and I get another disk and I start again. Is that what you're asking me, sir? That's my level of technology that I started with.
Sure.
But in being an executive assistant, I sat in these amazing meetings where this company had locations in London, California, Silicon Valley, New York, Oklahoma, and I'm listening to all these executives, and I get to listen to the design team and the development team and the sales team. And I sat in there like a sponge and I just absorbed everything that I was learning as you're taking the meeting minutes and as you're taking the notes to send out. So 21 years later, I was still in technology. At that time, the company that I first started with, we actually were in the dot-com bubble and burst. We were in that momentum. And the things that you and I are using today, Zoom, GoToMeeting, we were creating that when I was in college. We created the ability to do live video streams as well as on-demand videos and the ability to draw on things. So it's been a long technology journey for me. And later in my career, I was a CEO and an operations director of 2 different companies that built websites and apps and membership databases. So I got to pull out all of those technology skills throughout the years. But really, I had been doing that for so long for things that were super, super custom. And then I kind of realized that lately, everything had gone to being templates. Technology had evolved to drag and drop features. You can go online, you can build your own website, you can build your own app, you can publish things. So I had lost that love of things being designed from scratch. So I really looked around and thought, okay, I'm a CEO, I'm running a technology company. And to be clear, I was not the owner of that company. So I wasn't the entrepreneur who created it. I was an employee-based CEO. And I was running all of that day to day. And I thought, what am I genuinely passionate about for maybe the next 10 years of my life, the next 20 years of my life? Am I still passionate about this technology and where it's headed? Or is something new coming up? And I didn't know what it was going to be. But I just put out there into the universe that I needed to think and needed to kind of take a pause. And I realized, wait a minute, if I look at my calendar, Donna, there are 52 weeks a year. I had 36 speeches booked that year out of 52 weeks. So clearly I had accidentally found my passion. I didn't realize how much I loved training and teaching and speaking. So I had been doing so many keynote speeches that I realized that might be my passion. And then I started to take a look and realize how many people are asking me to go to breakfast, asking me to go to lunch, asking to pick my brain or be a mentor-mentee relationship. And I just decided, I think it's time. I think I can take that love of keynote speaking and training and teaching people, that passion I've always had of helping others grow. And I see so many people starting to ask me for it. What if I just flip the switch of it being a mentor relationship into it being a coaching relationship? So that's really kind of how that worked for me. Sometimes you have to get outside of your box and grow outside of your comfort zone. And I felt like technology had become my comfort zone.
Nice. Very nice. Well, that's an excellent story. Thank you so much. And an unusual one. I don't know that there are a lot of people that come into it from operations, more from like HR, things like that, rather than being a technology leader. That's a different path to being a coach. Okay. Have you always had the entrepreneurial spark? And did you know that you wanted to own your business, or was that a leap?
Not at all. I grew up with this concept that I was not a risk taker. And people throughout my life, whether it be in school or conferences or articles, people had just shaped the world into like 2 modes. You're a risk taker or you're not. You know, you're the leader or you're the follower. And I really fell into that trap of believing that I wasn't a risk taker. So it took a lot of personal guts for me to say that I was going to go out on my own, be a solopreneur, become a business coach, get outside of my bubble of technology. It almost took me 2 years of just toying with the idea in my mind or talking about it with my husband or talking about it with friends. Could I do this? Would I love it? What would it be like? It almost took 2 years for me to really genuinely take that leap. So if there's anybody on the call today who feels like they're in that mode and they're overanalyzing, they're overprocessing, the thing that finally helped me was to come up with a really clear personal family budget. What is the exact minimum amount of money that I need to make in order for this to work? How many months do I think it's going to take for me to be able to get to that minimum amount? And then you need to ensure that you have the family savings for that gap, right? And so once I looked at the real minimums of what I needed to earn, I leapt. And I leapt fast and I leapt deep, both feet in, and I should have done it a day sooner because what was amazing was that the money came, the success came. Everything that I had been working for was working towards this moment, and I just needed to have confidence in myself to make it happen.
Oh, that's excellent. That is excellent. I talk all the time as a former executive coach about the stories that we tell ourselves and how sometimes those stories prevent us from doing great things like you've done with your career. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. All right. Let's see here. What do you think people need to ask themselves before they begin the entrepreneurial journey? If to your point, if we've got people that are thinking about doing it.
Yeah, I think understanding themselves. So whatever kind of personality test or things, whether it be Enneagram or DISC or whatever it is that's important to them, they really need to dig deep and understand their own strengths and their own weaknesses. And then they need to think short-term and long-term. So what are they going to do in the short term? You know, that's really what people focus on a lot. Getting up, getting started, you know, how do I get the LLC? How do I get the bank account started? How do I get my first client? How do I write my first proposal? All of that stuff is actually fun and exciting, but you need to make sure that as you're developing that, I would encourage you to be thinking about the long term. So don't write a proposal in your first 3 months that you're not willing to stick to 3 years from now. Make sure that you're building a business that you won't burn out in, because once it's you, yourself, and I, it's all on you. And so if you're going to go a solopreneur journey like I am, make sure that when you're doing those short-term buildups, that you're constantly saying, so for example, I'm going to start a group coaching program and I'm going to have 10 people in it. I'm going to have it every single week. Are you going to love that? Are you going to love that 3 years from now? That's my question that I like to challenge people on, is to make sure that whatever they're doing in the short term would be something they would love in the long term, so that they're really crafting, because a lot of solopreneurs are looking for work-life balance, they're looking for a specific lifestyle, and then when they get started, they kind of box themselves into having a weekly meeting every Monday. Well, when are you going to take that vacation that you said you were going to do? So
Yeah.
just thinking long-term when you're building your short-term plans.
Well, I was on a podcast with Frank Smith with Mosaic Personnel, and we were talking about this, and he tries to talk everybody out of entrepreneurship. He says it's really hard, and he said, but it's really enjoyable. And I think the thing you get out of it is you get to have the influence you want to have and the impact you want to have, and you also get flexibility. But on the other side, flip side, it's all on you, to your point.
Yeah, exactly. And if you've got your list of weaknesses, if you know that you're eventually going to hire a third party or a vendor or a virtual assistant or a social media company, then you've got that plan laid ahead so that you know, I'm doing this now, but once I earn this amount of money or I achieve this amount of goals or I have this certain thing, then I can flip the switch, and that weakness, that thing that I don't enjoy very much, I can turn that over to somebody else. And you've got that plan laid ahead of you.
Do it. Very, very nice. All right. I want everybody to start thinking about their questions for Stacy. Let's see here. Given where we're at right now, given the pandemic, given the stress we've all been through, what are the most important skills, capabilities, qualities of female owners right now? And how can we build them? So what's most important, and how do we build those skills and capabilities?
Well, that is so interesting. That makes me think of the 3 E's that have been on my mind lately. I have been writing these down and considering and really putting some deep thought into these 3 E's of empathy, engagement, and energy. So empathy is a really important quality and skill for any leader to have right now, because we have, throughout this pandemic, been seeing some mental anguish, some emotional anguish with families and with workers. And so that ability to build a skill where you know how to connect authentically with people, and that you know how to build relationships that aren't just professional, but that you can genuinely show them how much you care about them, whether it be your clients or whether it's your employees or your vendors that you work with. I think that empathy is something that is a highly sought after skill at this particular moment in business. Engagement, really being able to inspire engagement in teams is not as easy as it sounds. They publish year after year after year studies that show that the US and Canada actually tie for first and second for having the most engaged workforce. And then we all want to say, yay, and pat ourselves on the back until we realize that the most engaged workforce is only about 33 to 34%. Every
Wow.
year, it just changes a tiny bit, but that's it. We're talking about 1/3 of your team genuinely saying that they're engaged at the workplace versus 2/3 saying that they don't feel engaged, they're disengaged, or they're actively hostile at work and they
Wow.
hate going to that job. So your ability as a leader to learn skills on how to make a team really get engaged with your mission, your vision, that strategy, that roadmap of where you're headed, that's an art. That is something to definitely work on and to read books about and to make sure that you're upping your game, right? And then energy is important because it's important for me. I just mentioned it as a solo entrepreneur. You have to guide your life and your lifestyle the way you want it to be. But it's also just as important for the corporations. There are people who are starting to call the CEO role the Chief Energy Officer.
I'll be darned.
Because in reality, the leader of the company sets the tone. They set the energy for where that team is going to follow. So empathy, engagement, and energy. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are the 3 E's that have been on my mind lately.
No, that's really useful. That's really useful. I totally agree. All right, guys, I want you to start putting questions in the Q&A box, and I'll ask you one more, and then we'll go to the audience. So let's see here. We talked about measures of success, and how do you recommend that our audience measure their own success rather than the typical profit and loss statement, which of course is one thing you need to be aware of. But what other methods are you coaching corporations and leaders about?
So I think there are a couple of ways in which we can all step up our game. So most people know a profit and loss statement, or they can get educated on that. They can have a CPA, an accountant. They can have somebody help teach them about a profit and loss, about the balance sheet. But a lot of those things are in the rearview mirror. So you get your profit and
Good
loss
point.
statement at the end of a month.
Good point.
Well, what was happening every day of that month? Should you have been doing something different? So I like to teach people about leading indicators versus lagging indicators. And this has been out in the market for a long time, but if no one's ever exposed you to it, it's just not something that you remember to think of every single day. So a leading indicator, I want you to imagine that like you're in a car and you're looking forward out your windshield. When you're going forward and looking ahead, you can see out that glass. You can see that there's a stop sign ahead. You can see road signs that it's going to be curvy and you need to slow down. You want to look for a leading indicator that would be more like a windshield of, am I going to have a good day? Am I going to have a good week? Leading indicators are going to be things that are little, short, quick. How many calls did I make? How many appointments did I have? How many proposals do I have out? What's the dollar figure of those proposals? What are the opportunities that are ahead of you? And are you doing the day-to-day activities to have a successful report at the end of the month? The lagging indicator, that's more the result. What is the literal ROI result that I want to get from my marketing or from my product? What is the result that you're looking for? Those are going to be lagging indicators that are rear view at that point. So when I am talking to teams, I make sure that they understand the difference between the leading and the lagging, because you need both. You need to know the results that you want, but you also have to know the activities day to day that are going to achieve those results. So when you're looking in the rearview mirror, that's fine, but you want to make sure that you also have a windshield plan too. The other thing that I like to discuss with people whenever they're discussing their goals, their KPIs, their key performance indicators, I like to think in terms of stoplights. So in scaling up, we do something with red, yellow, green. So if you wanted to have 25 phone calls a day for your prospecting, is that considered good? Is that the goal? Or what would be a stretch goal? What would really be super green? If you could stretch yourself, what number could you hit? And then also, what is red? What's disappointing? Because if you're a leader and you're managing people, or even if you're a solo entrepreneur and you've hired your first vendor or your first contract, you need to be really clear with expectations. This is the goal. This would be hitting it out of the park. This would be super green on our stoplight, but this is red. And I want to be sure that we're really clear and that we're communicating what would be disappointing to us as a leader. I like when Peter Drucker often says, if you can't measure it, how can you improve it? So making sure that we have measurements is a way of making sure that we're improving.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And reminding us to think about those things that are preemptive, right? About how the future is going to look. That's really a very, very good point. Okay, Susan Shears is asking, do you have any advice about how you can generate energy and maintain your energy, especially if you're an introvert? It's a good question for you. Yeah, me too.
I love that because most people make an automatic assumption. If Stacy's a keynote speaker and I've seen her on stage or she's on this podcast, she's an extrovert. Not true at all. Being an introvert or an extrovert is about where you derive your energy from. So I can be what I call a situational extrovert. I have taught myself, I have the skills, I have the ability to get on stage and to rock a speech. And then I can tell you what I need later that night is silent, quiet, alone time. Sure. I can walk into a networking event and I can network with 300 people. And then when I get in my car, I don't even want the radio on because I want so much silence at that point. So definitely introvert or extrovert. I never want anybody to put themselves in a box and think that they can't do things because of something like that. But you do have to manage your energy levels. So you have to find what works well for you. Some people get up and they exercise. And there are so many studies that show that, 30 minutes worth of exercise, gives you all of these endorphins and sets the tone for your day. I happen to be somebody who really likes music. And so there are certain Spotify channels that I need in order to pump myself up. If I'm not in the mood that day and I need to pump myself up for some 4-hour webinar that I'm about to do, then I'll listen to a certain set of music whenever I'm curling my hair and putting on my makeup. So find your rhythm of what does give you energy. Make sure that you're unplugging when you need to unplug, that you're getting a good 8 hours of sleep if possible, that you're having downtime, that you're living a well-rounded life with family and things like that. But there might just be like a small thing like music that brightens your day.
Very nice. Very nice. I like that a lot. All right. Case Lane is asking, what kind of technology developments do you think will be helpful for women leaders in the near future? What do you see coming?
There is so much happening with AI, and I think that it is really hard to wrap your head around. You can read the headline and it sounds great, and then you start to read the article, and somewhere around paragraph 3, you're like, I'm not following. How exactly does this apply to my life? But I would say that artificial intelligence, in particular, as it relates to how to automate things, I think that women who are leaders right now really need to be focused on processes. There are so many things happening in the economy today that are outside of your control. The price of lumber, computer chip shortages. We're having a lot of supply chain issues. We're also having people issues with recruiting, with hiring, with getting enough people in the door that are applicants. And so what you can focus on is what's internal to you. What are your processes? And have you looked at your processes lately and thought, can I improve them? Is there any technology that could improve this process? Is there any way that we could automate any of these particular things? So get an email, it has this trigger, it sends this reply. Just think small automations that might be able to help.
Yeah, very good. I'm so sorry you're having to deal with your earphones, but I appreciate it.
We're making it work.
Yeah. It's interesting because the system that we've partnered with a group that has AI intelligence behind a digital marketing services platform, and that's something that we're now offering through PursePower. And people can actually set up exactly what you're talking about, where when a customer does this, what happens? It kicks off the next thing. And especially as solopreneurs and stuff, we've got to use automation and technology. And we're coming up a vertical learning curve ourselves, trying to learn how to do it. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. All right. Any other questions, guys? All right, let's see here. Well, while they're coming up with questions, what are the most important things we need to have learned from you today?
Well, I'm just humble that you would have learned anything from me today. Very excited, very honestly enjoyed my time with you all today. I think for me, if there was one big lesson learned, it would be confidence. Confidence is key. We talked about confidence when it comes to your leadership and how you're speaking to others, and they really want their leaders to have confidence in the roadmap and where they're headed, but also even in the awards and in the self-promotion and in the marketing, right? That confidence of knowing that you can do it and just putting in that application, putting your hat into the ring. I think that confidence is really key. And one of the things that I'd like for you guys to just ask yourself whenever you leave here today, what is the one thing, just one thing, that if you learned it would boost your confidence? And then how can you acquire that skill quickly? Because we can become overwhelmed and we can just think, well, these are my strengths, these are my weaknesses, I'll just play to my strengths. But if you can narrow that concept to just one weakness that you think you have, one area of expertise that you'd like to learn, what's the one thing that you think if you learned it, it would boost your confidence?
Gosh, I love that. I love that. And really, I find trying to really focus and hone in on the things that matter. I want to know 50 things. So identifying what's the really important thing that I need to learn is a good point. It's a good point. Okay. All right. What actions would you like our audience to take coming out of this session today?
Well, I'm going to take a minute here and I'm going to put some things into the chat because we talked about that give versus take.
Sure.
And I actually want to give today.
Okay.
So rather than maybe 3 actions, it's really more like 3 takeaways for the audience today. If there was something that I said about scaling up and you're unfamiliar with it and you just want to learn about it, I want to be able to offer you that 8-page cliff notes, and make that book manageable for you. So I'm going to put into the chat my email address. If you want that, shoot it over to me, let me know, I'll get it to you. And then the other thing at the beginning, you had mentioned that on a monthly basis, I write for an e-magazine. So I have a lot of free business advice, free tips, things that, you don't even need to hire a coach for. You can read all of these great recaps. So I want to be sure that you get that link so that you can look through those at your convenience and see if any of those articles speak to you, something that you might be able to learn from. And then my last little give would be that I always offer a 30-minute free consultation. And I don't want anybody to take that wrong and think, oh, well, I don't need a coach right now. I'm not hiring for a coach. I don't need a consultation. I don't mean that you might need to hire me. I mean that you might just want career advice, that you just want to talk to a friend, that you just need an ear to lend, right? I talked at the beginning about the ability to just bounce ideas off one another, and mentoring and helping other people and being a brick paver is really a passion of mine. So I'm going to put into the chat those 3 ways in which, if anybody wanted to reach out to me, those are ways in which I would love to give.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you. And by the way, I think very highly, the stuff that you sent me had all kinds of links in it. So you were making it really easy for me to follow up with you if I wanted to do any of those things. And I was thinking, man, I could do the same thing. I need to do a better job of making it easy.
The signature lines of our emails, a lot of people just overlook it. They just put, name, phone number, email address. But I have other things on there. For a decade now, I've had something called Let's Get Connected. And I just have the links to all my social media, because if somebody's a big Instagrammer, then they know that they could follow me, right? And it doesn't pertain to probably 90% of the people who get it. But if it pertains to just that 10%, then it's worth it.
Absolutely. And you get that social media traction that we all need nowadays.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So I've got, I think it must be Gene Kelly's offering you a free Berkman. Have you taken a Berkman instrument
I have
before?
not.
It's excellent.
That would be wonderful.
It's a terrific tool. I mean, I'm biased. My husband makes me raise my left hand whenever I talk about it, because I just explain everything in the world through the Berkman. So I'll get you 2 together.
Oh, I love that. That's great.
Okay. Other any questions, comments, any other chat items here, guys, before we go ahead and close up? All right, give people a minute here. All right. Okay. So any final words of wisdom to share of any kind that you just want to share with us?
I think for me, other than just making sure that people leave here with confidence and with their one lesson that they might want to upskill on, that's going to bring them more confidence, the only other thing I'd really like to close out on is just making sure that strategic planning, that it's not this big scary thing that everybody believes, oh, just corporations do strategic planning, right? Which, yes, that is true. The majority of my clients are somewhere between $1 million to $250 million in revenue. There are some really big companies out there that believe in strategic planning and put a lot of energy into that. But there's no reason on earth that small businesses shouldn't be putting just as much effort into the strategic planning process. The same worksheets, the same tools, the same books, the same YouTube videos that you might be watching as a corporation are the same kind of things that a small business owner could do. So that's a real passion of mine. I've been a business coach now for a couple of years, been working with those corporations, but it's really important to me to have some kind of outlet for those small business owners. So I have something that I'm going to put in the chat for people. If they know somebody who's always wanted to have a strategic plan, but don't really know where to begin, and they also just don't feel like they have a budget to hire a coach, I have a scholarship program that I just launched that I'm really passionate about, where I'm trying to put together small groups of small business owners and solo entrepreneurs who want to step through that process in a 9-week course and be able to learn what strategic planning would be like, and to take those lessons learned from those corporations and to boil it down to how it impacts their small business.
Yeah. Well, and it's so important because whether we're a big business or a small business, we've still got to compete with those guys. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares that you're a little business. You've still got to appear bigger and play bigger. We all do. So the idea that you would have them understand how the bigger players are looking at it, I think is a very, very useful thing.
Absolutely. You want to pretend like you're already in that 10-year self. What's that 10-year BHAG, that big, hairy, audacious goal? You want to go ahead and put that hat on and pretend like you're there. And then you work backwards and you say, okay, well, if that's where I want to be in a decade, then what can I do in the next 3 years? And then what's reasonable for this year? What's a step on that path and on that journey? But strategic planning can be a lot of fun because you're dreaming about the future and then you're making a realistic plan about how to make that dream come true.
Very good. Very good. Absolutely. Absolutely. Exciting and daunting at the same time. Okay. All right. Stacy, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. You and I hadn't known each other very well, so I appreciate you being here today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job. Yeah. All right. Well, let me go ahead and close it up here then. I just want to let you guys know that on May 14th, we're going to have Tracy Chadwell here with 1843 Capital, and she's been named as Entrepreneur Magazine's 100 Powerful Women, and also Forbes 8 Women VCs to Know. So I'm incredibly excited. She's coming up next Friday. On May 28th, we'll go ahead and have the network session, and I hope everybody comes back and you can get to know each other better. And then on June 11th, I've got Mick Cornett, the former mayor of Oklahoma City, coming in, and he's also been the head of the Council of Mayors across the U.S. If you don't already have a directory listing, please sign up. If you have a company that has a female CEO or president, or is half owned by women, or has at least 20% women on the board, we want you in our directory. We also do have a new way with this digital marketing tool set that I was telling you about to help you improve your presence in cyberspace. You can go to our website on the upper left-hand corner if you want to. You can just give us your information and we'll get you a snapshot report that will take a look at your business in cyberspace everywhere, including social media, your website, SEO, all of that, and give you some real insight about what's going well and not going so well. So take advantage of it. We're not charging for that. Let's see here. Please do download the Google Chrome extension, which is on our website. You can put that on your browser and it will show you which companies are women-owned or women-led as you shop. I hope you use your First Power directory. Guys, Mother's Day is coming up. If you're buying Mother's Day's gifts, please go to women-owned businesses to buy from, right? That's why we're here. Please like and share our social media pages, and please let your friends know about this webcast that we do every Friday at 10 Central. Okay, any last words?
I'm just going to use this opportunity, if you don't mind, to give a shout out to my mommy. Not only was it Teacher Appreciation Week, and she spent decades of her life giving to students and being a wholehearted teacher, but she is now retired. and has continued her giving. She actually works at a COVID-19 facility where she calls and schedules everybody's vaccinations. So she is working as a volunteer almost more than she even worked when she was a teacher.
Bless her heart. Wow.
So
Yeah.
happy Mother's Day to my mom, the person who taught me how to help others.
Oh, absolutely. And happy Mother's Day to all the mothers on the line, and those that act as mothers to nieces and nephews. And okay, just to leave you guys. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we hope that we'll see you next Friday. Please remember, purse power, we have it. Let's use it. Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you so much, Stacy.